So my name's Simon Crossley. I'm from MyLife Digital. We're 2 years ago a startup in the personal data space, and we're providing API-based services for storage and management of personal data. So I wanted to talk about the development that we've done on our API. The title of the talk was Development of a Population Scale API, because MyLife Digital started out with the concept of, this was something that would work at scale and was built for scale. And along the way, we've learned a few things about how to do this. The approach is necessary. I wanted to share those learnings with you and then pose a few challenges. I think for all companies, organisations, individuals involved in management of data, I think there's some common challenges, and I think this conference is a great place to discuss them. So, awesome. Thank you. Great timing, sorry. So the key learnings, in our approach, relentless customer focus, and for an API, that customer is often reached through developers, so you need to understand what developers want from your API. Leading with security. If you're talking about data, it's about trust, and you can't engage people's trust if you can't give them assurances about security, and that's something that I think you would struggle with the DIY approach, and that's why you look to organisations to provide you with that kind of leading security. And always agile. You build it, you operate it, and you learn from it, and you keep changing, and that's something that we've had to do significantly at MyLife Digital. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the credentials of myself, MyLife Digital, why you should listen to us, the learnings, and then the challenges. So, thank you. Yeah. So personally, I've had over 20 years developing distributed systems with blue chip companies, startups, Amazon, lots of different organisations in different sectors. The most relevant experience I think I could share with you was with a startup where we were working with supply chain traceability, so understanding where products come from in supply chains. I was 5 years there with a solution that we absolutely believed in. This company, we were set to change the world. We were fixing global capitalism. This was great ideas to make the world a better place. We worked bloody hard at that for 5 long years, had a great deal of success, but the money ran out before we got to the final conclusion. And I think I can see lots of parallels with what we were achieving there and with what's going on with personal data. And I think the sort of key learning for me there was, it's not always enough to have that amazing solution. The end vision can be fantastic. The journey of how to achieve it is where people succeed or fail. So we've been working at MyLife Digital, so founded 2 years ago, and we're entirely focused in this space. We've grown through some key acquisitions of some data processing organisations in charities and sports, and it's a great place to work in a really interesting field. So key learnings that we've had, really, I'd summarise as personal data is everywhere, and if you're taking an API out and engaging with organisations, there's a lot of personal data that they have in their systems, and so all engagements begin with integration. So you have to understand your API, you have to understand your client systems, and you have to be able to integrate. Adaptation, when we began, we started out with a vision that was very much like individual data lakes, but at a population scale. Everybody would have their encrypted data lake. It was about storage of the data. But as we engaged with people, we found it was much more about the permissions. We were doing this, and then GDPR came along, and that gave us a whole new focus about managing permissions and managing consent. And we focused really heavily on consent, so a big change of direction. And then we learned people were going to be using other justifications for processing data. Legitimate interest was a key one for marketing purposes, contracts. And so it went from being a system to manage consent to being a system that manages consent and 5 other processing reasons. So it's that process of constant learning. We had to rewrite the API and completely change it. It took us 3 sprints, but we had a completely different service for managing all the processing justification. So what are the main challenges? I mean, I think several people have talked about it, and I think it's just going to keep coming back again and again. It's all about semantics. You know, the data that we share, you know, we can move it around the internet, or the technologies make that easy, but understanding that data, how do I use it? Is it portable? Can I interoperate with it? Those semantics are going to be the areas where we really need all of our ingenuity and innovation to solve those problems. They're really tough. You know, so there are standards as one approach to do this. So PSD2 and open banking standards, there's some fantastic services I think going to be developed from that kind of standardisation. But one of my favourite examples of interoperability is, you know, I use a number of different running apps, and there's a service called Taperic. It's one guy has developed this thing. It sits there, it runs in the background, and it uploads your running data or any exercise data you've done, and it can transfer it between all of these different services. It's really cool. It's open source. The repository's on GitHub. You can see every time one of those services changes, he updates his code and keeps the service moving forward. You know, it's an amazing thing done by one person. And so I think, yeah, I think I just pressed the wrong button again. Yeah, so sometimes I think interoperability is going to come from standards, but a lot of the time it's going to come from developers who are providing the innovation to deliver valuable services to customers. And I think it's empowering those developers with your API is the key to success. Are you?
No, I don't know what any, but
stuck in a loop.
Interesting. Okay.
Thanks. And whilst on the subject of standards, I just wanted to mention Uma, say hi to Mike Schwartz. Yeah, in particular, you know, I love Uma, I love the concept of Uma, and as a standard, I think it's fantastic, but it has this idea of this elaborate dance of sharing tokens. You know, you get a token from over there, you present it over here, you redirect a browser. Yeah. It's a great concept, it's a beautiful thing, and I love to watch a dance, but you know, I don't often participate in dances myself. You know, and as a general rule, I've learned from Christmas parties that I've been to, developers don't generally dance. And I think we need to find a way to engage people with a part of the dance. And we need real-world use cases that will then get developers involved. And I think, you know, Uma's a great case for that. And then, press it.
Yeah.
And then finally, I wanted to kind of challenge the community really on the idea of innovating and collaborating with semantic understanding of knowledge. You know, there's some the open source movements provide us with some great tools for being incredibly rapid and adapting to change. You know, these tools are fantastic, and everybody who develops them will be using some form of version control, GitHub, and from those we derive, you know, other repositories, you know, Node package management, Maven Central for Java code libraries. Yeah. They're amazing tools. I think if we could form some kind of open, innovative, distributed space around semantics of personal data, sharing schemas, evolving schemas. You can take something that exists, fork it, version it, base something off it. You know, if we could get that kind of repository as a basis for interoperability between all these different services that we're building, then I think that will help us develop services that the end customers are going to be more engaged with. You know, if they interoperate and they're portable, then those are going to be better services for customers. So, thanks, Kai. So just to conclude, you know, the sort of strategies we've learned to be most important in building this API have been, you know, the customer focus, the concentrating on empowering developers, having leading security because people can't do that themselves. The onus is on service providers to be secure, and the agility of all your operations. Get out there, do it, learn from it, do it better, constantly evolving. And then the challenges, the semantic web was promised a long time ago and it's yet to really come to fruition. If we can do that around personal data, we'll deliver better services to customers. Empower the developers to work with the API, and if we can create a shared space for innovation around semantic data, I think it'll be a really useful thing. And if anybody would like to talk to me about getting involved in such a space, or telling me if one already exists.
Compare semantic efforts.
There's actually a question for you, actually, that a critical importance of semantics in the personal data ecosystem, but where do you think semantics need to reside in the ecosystem? So who should take the leading role and who should sort of...
So, I don't think there can be an individual that takes the leading role.
No, but you know,
so
organizations and what kind of structures needs.
Yeah. So, I'd really like to just have a discussion and see what people think about the best way to take that forward. You know, I'd be really keen to be involved in whatever we decide to do.
There's a question? Yeah, let's take on the back.
I was just a comment, we have a project exactly to do this research project for the software.
Fantastic.
Excellent. And one question there.
I think as little as I wanted, this is one of the small things that governments actually can do. Because when you put out something like GDPR, it's very clear that it's not a model, it's not a data model, it's legal terms.
Yeah.
But in a perfect world, I would see reuse and we can publish the core vocabulary next to the GDPR. And it's within reach. I mean, it's all these people who can do it. So if you want to participate in things like getting that kind of work done, it's open. You can find it, join up. And I think that's where it goes, especially for regulations. But there's other kinds of areas where you should look somewhere else.
But I think, you know, going back to Yogi's presentation this morning about different paces of change, I think anything at the government scale is operating at a slower pace of change. You know, if we want to innovate, it's the developers who will change the schemas that governments and standard bodies put out. I think it's important that they've got a way of taking whatever's there and adapting it. Exactly, yeah.
Okay, so let's take hands to some.